Imagine this. An orphaned girl with no family status or wealth suddenly rises to take the place of a queen. She's not even from the royal tribe. She's a common Jew in a foreign land. And yet, against all odds, she becomes the most powerful woman in the kingdom. How does this happen? What does she do when faced with a life-or-death decision that could save her people? This is the extraordinary story of Queen Esther, a young woman whose courage and faith changed the fate of an entire nation. Hello, everyone. Today, I'm taking you on an incredible journey, a story of bravery, destiny, and the quiet strength of one remarkable woman. Esther's story is more than a tale of royalty. It's about standing up for what's right, even when the risks are high. Imagine living in a world where your people face destruction, and you're the only one with the power to stop it. But doing so means putting your own life on the line. What would you do? If you love stories of courage and faith, you're going to love this one. Before we begin, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and share it with your friends so more people can hear about this amazing tale. Now, let's uncover every detail of the incredible story of Queen Esther. Stay with me until the end. You won't want to miss a single moment of this journey through courage and faith. Long ago, in the heart of a vast and powerful kingdom, the Persian Empire thrived under the rule of King Ahasuerus. This mighty empire, stretching across 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia, was a land of wealth, culture, and intrigue. Within this grand kingdom, hidden among its diverse peoples, was a minority group, the Jews, living quietly under Persian rule. And in one of these provinces lived a young girl named Esther, who had no idea that her life would soon intersect with the king's throne and change the course of history forever. Her life had been full of hardships. She lost her parents when she was just a child. But she wasn't left alone. Her older cousin Mordecai, a kind and wise man, took her in and raised her as his own daughter. Mordecai taught Esther about their faith, their traditions, and the importance of integrity. Esther grew up to be not just beautiful, but humble and kind, with a quiet strength that would one day change the world. At the palace, things weren't going smoothly. King Ahasuerus was hosting a grand banquet, showcasing the wealth and glory of his empire. On the final day of the feast, the king called for Queen Vashti to come and display her beauty before his guests. But Vashti refused. This act of defiance infuriated the king, and his advisors convinced him to remove her as queen. But now, the king needed a new queen. A decree was sent out, ordering the most beautiful young women in the empire to be brought to the palace. They would undergo months of preparation before being presented to the king. After months of preparation, the day finally came for Esther to meet King Ahasuerus. But before her turn, many other young women had already stood before the king. Each one had spent a year perfecting their appearance and learning palace etiquette. But the king was not impressed. One by one, they left the chamber with heavy hearts, knowing they had not captured the king's favor. The tension in the palace grew as every failed meeting added to the pressure. Then it was Esther's turn. She wasn't just beautiful. She had a kind and gracious spirit that stood out among all the others. When the king saw Esther, his expression changed. He was captivated by her grace, her humility, and the quiet strength she carried. Unlike the others, Esther didn't rely solely on her appearance. Her inner beauty shone through. The king placed the royal crown on her head and made her his queen. Esther, the orphaned Jewish girl, had now become Queen of Persia. But even as queen, Esther remained humble. She didn't forget Mordecai's advice or her connection to her people. She carried herself with quiet dignity, which would soon become crucial. But before we dive into the dramatic events that followed, let's talk about a moment of loyalty and courage that saved the king's life. One day, Mordecai overheard two palace guards plotting to assassinate King Ahasuerus. Their whispers were laced with treachery as they detailed their plan to strike during a quiet moment. Mordecai didn't hesitate. He reported the plot immediately to Queen Esther, who informed the king. The guards were captured and executed, and Mordecai's name was written in the royal records for saving the king. However, at the time, no reward was given to him. This act of loyalty would become a key part of the story later. Now let's meet the villain of our story, Haman. Haman was a high-ranking official in the king's court, but he was filled with pride and arrogance. He demanded that everyone bow to him. Mordecai, however, refused. As a Jew, he believed in bowing only to God. This infuriated Haman. He didn't just want revenge on Mordecai, he wanted to destroy all the Jewish people in the empire. Haman went home and told his wife and friends about Mordecai's defiance. They suggested he build a tall gallows and convince the king to hang Mordecai on it. Haman loved this idea and began plotting his revenge. Haman also tricked the king into signing a decree that ordered the destruction of all Jews in the kingdom. He even chose the date by casting lots, or Purim. The Jews were now in grave danger. But not all moments in Esther's story were filled with courage. Some were filled with fear and despair. When the decree to annihilate the Jews was announced, the news spread like wildfire. Across the empire, Jewish families huddled together, their faces pale with fear. Mothers held their children close, and fathers whispered prayers of protection. In the streets, whispers and cries echoed as people read the decree posted on walls. Some tore their clothes in mourning, while others knelt in prayer. In synagogues and homes, the Jewish community cried out to God, hoping for a miracle. Can you imagine living under the shadow of such a terrifying fate? The fear was real, but little did they know, a courageous queen was about to stand up for them. When Mordecai learned about Haman's plan, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned in the streets. He sent a message to Esther, urging her to go to the king and plead for her people. But Esther faced a terrifying dilemma. According to Persian law, no one could approach the king without being summoned, not even the queen. Entering the throne room uninvited could mean death. Mordecai's response to Esther was powerful.
Who knows, maybe you were made queen for such a time as this.
These words stirred something deep within Esther. She asked Mordecai and the Jewish people to fast and pray for 3 days. Then, she prepared to approach the king. After 3 days of prayer and fasting, Esther dressed in her royal robes and approached the king. The room fell silent as she entered uninvited. Would the king extend his scepter or order her punishment? The king smiled and held out his golden scepter, allowing Esther to speak. She invited the king and Haman to a banquet. At the banquet, the king asked, "What is your request? I'll give you anything, even half my kingdom." But Esther simply invited them to another banquet the next day. That night, Haman went home and bragged to his wife about being invited to the queen's banquet. But his joy didn't last. When the king couldn't sleep, he asked for the royal records to be read to him. He discovered that Mordecai had once saved his life and had never been rewarded. The next morning, the king ordered Haman to honor Mordecai by parading him through the streets. Can you imagine Haman's humiliation? At the second banquet, Esther revealed her true request. "My king, someone is planning to destroy me and my people." The king was shocked. "Who would do such a thing?" he asked. Esther pointed at Haman and said, "This wicked man." The king was furious. Haman's fate was sealed. He was hanged on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. Talk about poetic justice. The Jewish people were saved, and Esther's bravery was celebrated. To this day, the festival of Purim commemorates this victory. It's a time of feasting, giving, and remembering the courage of one woman who stood up for her people. And so, Esther's bravery changed the fate of an entire nation. From an orphan girl with no status, she rose to become a queen who risked everything for her people. Mordecai's loyalty, Esther's courage, and their faith in God remind us of powerful lessons we can all take to heart. What can we learn from Esther's story? First, courage often means stepping out of your comfort zone for a cause greater than yourself. Second, your beginnings don't define your destiny. What matters is the strength of your character and your faith. And finally, when we stand up for what is right, we pave the way for justice to prevail. So what part of Esther's story inspires you the most? Is it her courage, Mordecai's wisdom, or the triumph of good over evil? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring content. Thanks for watching, and remember, you were made for such a time as this.